You're live. Oh, this is TJ Morris, Theresa J. story like everybody else. I have TJ Morris ET Radio. And I'm going to be promoting people for the reason of expanding our consciousness and helping a friend of mine that wants to do a conference. Now, many of my friends have watched me get old, and you can find pictures of me from back in the 50s and when I was 50. So there's only one left of myself in a brown dress, I think, and you may find one of me with black hair and a red cowboy hat on when I was in Houston as a Houston spinneret. But I've gotten older, and it's time I tell a story while I'm still in human form. And I hit my eye with a baseball when I was a child. I broke my nose and my face 5 places. They put me back together. It's very traumatic, but not as traumatic as in the 2nd grade. I caught hepatitis. And I was the only child in the school in West Monroe, Louisiana at Mitchell Elementary that got it. And they couldn't find out how I got hepatitis. But I turned very yellow and became very, very ill. And I finally, I was in St. Francis Hospital across the river in Monroe, Louisiana, where I was born. And they sent for a cleaning machine, like a dialysis machine. Now, this is a story I had. But I do remember passing out of my body and being up over my body and seeing people in the white room above me. And to me, they were angels because I had grown up as a Christian, a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant in Monroe, Louisiana. And my family worked in the Air Force and the Army. And my grandmother lived in a home that was a Air Force officer's home she bought from the government. And we were just, I guess you'd say, what we in the 50s were middle class in Monroe, Louisiana. We weren't rich and we weren't poor. And when I died, they cleaned my blood, and I guess I passed then. But anyway, I returned, and it took me months to get better. So that was the first time I passed, and I had angels, if you will, or multidimensional beings, depending on what you want to call personages that were around. And as I was a younger child before that, I used to play with a child called Leo or Cleo, Mother told me. And she's passed now. My father's passed. My husband's are passed. I have 4 children and 3 sisters and 3 brothers in this lifetime. But I've had 2 brothers pass before me when they were young. Anyway, so I passed and then came back and recovered with angels' help, our spirit's help, if you will. Then I willed myself to White Sands, New Mexico, where some uncles lived, but I didn't know that. I just knew I had to go. So I felt like I was guided by these beings to White Sands, New Mexico. And my uncle worked at Los Alamos. Later on, another one worked at NASA, and I married my high school sweetheart that worked at NASA. Chris Kraft gave me the job during the Vietnam War. Stephen Lee Parrish is now deceased and the father of my children. But go back to right when I was in the 2nd grade, because I passed and had a memory of passing, coming back. So I was a little different, but I felt compelled to be alive, but to search for these beings. And that's why I felt I was compelled to go to White Sands, New Mexico. So it was the 3rd, I had about a year to recoup, but it was about the 3rd, 4th grade, or getting ready to go into the 4th grade. And so in White Sands, I was taken aboard what I would call a ship, or this family. And I had remembered that I had met them when I was 4. So I had gone up on a ship at 4, and I remember seeing my body laying in a pasture, literally a little girl, and I knew it was my body. So I knew I had a family that came and went in a physical reality, and these were on a spacecraft. So this was an interesting story that happened But it all came together from the White Sands, and remembering seeing myself at 4, and then passing in the second grade, so about 7, and then about 9, I'd be 10, going to White Sands. So I've had some guidance from beings that I'm still searching how to explain how to live life and then be here now. But my grandmother and relatives said, don't talk about those people or those angels or whomever, because people won't believe you. So I was never allowed to tell my story. Now, later on, after I go through that teen years, I had learned we were uniquely different and we could will things to happen. So I believed in going on a path, a spiritual journey, and I planned on meeting people and doing the best I could with what I had. And I could twirl batons and play piano and ride horses. And I had a really good life, I thought. And then my high school sweetheart and I, we fell in love after the first year and a half or so. And I was in the newspaper, and people saw me where it said I was going to Washington, D.C. And that was May 67. And there's a long story to tell after that, because I wanted to be helpful in state law enforcement, and I started to raise my children. And then by the time they were, Angie was going into high school and actually going to college. She came up and lived with me where I had joined the Navy and went through boot camp. And I had a life to tell between there, and there's a lot of living that went on in and out of country. I went to Africa and the UK and Spain and Portugal and Japan. And I don't know how to piece all of this together and make it make sense. But I feel like I need to, because I've been writing for UFO Digest from 87 to, no, excuse me, 2007. I get years mixed up sometimes. I apologize. But if I don't do this now and tell this story, I'm going to wind up without a story to leave behind that matches some of what I've put in some books I've written. So many of my friends have gotten to know me as a radio announcer, and that's just something I did to help a friend for the Stargate to the Cosmos. Tommy Hawk's Blood and Janet Carroll Lesson came to me and asked me to help put on an event. So I created ACO, but I had been putting on events with my husband where we lived in Kentucky, bluegrass events. But I've got to stop because I've got to let a cat in. Not mine, my daughter's, but my dog is talking to her. And hush, Coco. Life with animals. Coco, I'll go let the cat in. I better stop now, but I've got a story to tell, and it'll be at Stargate to the Cosmos, so I hope you can join us. Coco, hush! October 25th to 28th. So hope you'll meet me there and come listen to my radio shows. We've got Alien Hunters with Daryl Sims on Thursday. Coco! Okay, I'm going to end this for right now. I'll return.